Fears grow about viral political memes polarizing society. That's the big headline takeaway from a highly disturbing story that I recommend you read. Because if you are fearful about viral political memes polarizing society, guess what? You're not alone. The Pentagon is also extremely fearful about this subject to the point that they are now devoting research resources to combating the very scary and very dangerous threat of viral political memes doing untold damage to the body politic. Now, this traces back to 2016. I'm sure you all remember, and if you don't, go refresh your memory, that after Trump won the election, there was a panic, essentially, about how Trump's win was artificial, and it was boosted by all this fake news flooding the internet, and something dramatic had to be done to counteract that fake news, or else we were going to be getting all these, in the eyes of the naysayers, suboptimal political outcomes. So, long before Trump himself appropriated the term fake news, and he now basically uses it to delegitimize any story he doesn't like, it was really propped up by liberal pundits and others who were in shock at Trump's victory, and they needed somebody to blame, so they blamed the internet. They blamed social media. They blamed the weaponization of our modern communication systems as somehow lending itself to manipulation of the public. And that explained Trump's victory. And what resulted from this spate of paranoid warnings about fake news proliferating the web? Well, it was greater calls to regulate the internet, greater calls for the tech companies to take a more proactive role in regulating political speech. And it also, in a broader sense, resulted in the stigmatization of independent media, which could be portrayed as somehow on the fringes and therefore contributing to this polarization effect in the populace that supposedly reinforces especially Russian designs to tear apart the country. And so you've seen these institutional structures in the media, in the government, in the commercial world, moving toward this end goal of basically constricting the range of permissible speech on the internet. And now it turns out the Department of Defense isn't on the game. Gee, who could have thought? Who ever could have anticipated that this ostensibly liberal goal, because it was mostly liberals promoting this, would eventually be funneled into a Pentagon ambition to increase their own power and increase their ability to unilaterally police, in essence, the free flow of information online. So this story reports that in the past couple of weeks, there's been a research presentation undertaken by product engineers at DARPA, DARPA, that's the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which is known for all manner of very, let's say, to put it mildly, dubious endeavors over the years, where they have all kinds of scientific explorations for the purpose of basically advancing American military superiority. And they've now brought this into their portfolio, meaning they've characterized it as a national security threat for everybody to put out what they want on the internet and create fake news. So they're going to be investigating ways in which that the Pentagon, through force, can regulate the internet. And what do they want to do? Here's how it's described. They want a new software program that algorithmically tests and news items for factual veracity or truth. And they need a new software program to do this, so they're going to go ahead with a algorithmic testing process, which will include an ability to scan and evaluate 250,000 news articles and 250,000 social media posts with fake items thrown in the mix, so to see if the algorithm can pick up on them. Now, we've already basically surrendered to the algorithm in all other areas of life, whether it be the media, whether it be politics, which is increasingly influenced by whatever is algorithmically brought to the top of the attention heap on a given day. And now the Pentagon wants in, and they want to do it under the auspices of blocking fake news purveyors. So they're meeting with the software developers, and here's what they say that they want to come up with. Quote, a comprehensive suite of semantic inconsistency detectors, which would, they claim, dramatically increase the burden on media falsifiers. Now, do you want the Pentagon to be the sole arbiters of what is false and what is true in terms of news? Do you think that maybe they might have ulterior motives in making that determination, and it won't be just a simple, pure algorithmic conclusion as to what is valid informationally? I don't know. I think that would be a valid fear on your part. So forget any fear you might have of memes. The fear of the government using the pretext of national security, determining what you're allowed to view online is a little bit more of a scary prospect, at least in my judgment. And so that's coming, and you can thank the people who have been alarmists about online disinformation over the past several years, because they couldn't handle Trump's victory. They couldn't handle this idea that people will look to alternate modes of information consumption when they have such low trust in the more mainstream outlets. Rather than self-interrogate, rather than try to understand why that distrust is so rampant and might have adverse political consequences, they decided to pin all the blame on these kind of nameless, faceless, fake news proprietors who, if they're targeted, you can pretty much guarantee that the web that is cast, or the net that is cast, is going to fall upon people who are not creating quote-unquote fake news, but have views and opinions and reportorial styles that are deemed to be, in a sense, fake because they don't conform to established consensus. And are there actual fake news scammers? Yeah, there are people who just put out blatant and false disinformation for the purpose of basically just making money and to trick people. And there's a way to deal with that without making it this kind of grand ideological project to purify the internet and to put the Pentagon in charge of single-handedly determining what information is allowed to traverse the online networks. But, you know, the liberals and the neoconservatives and others in that mix created sort of the framework where this just seems now like a reasonable undertaking by the military, when, you know, I think anybody who has any knowledge about the history of how the military seeks to regulate speech, anybody who has that basic familiarity should understand the dire potential consequences of this. All right, so I'll link to that in the description box. Remember to contribute financially on Patreon or PayPal if you so please. That information is in the description box, and I'll talk to you later.